Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a great day so far and welcome to today's video, which is going to be my top 5 foundations in 2023. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so it's been about a year since I did my top 5 foundations. I don't like to do it too abruptly. I don't like to commit and say that a new foundation has made its way into my top 5 for many months. And as much as I might love or like foundations, new ones that come and go, or new ones that to me that I've just tried, making it into that top 5 is a tough job. I have very high expectations and I have a lot of foundations that I absolutely love and adore and that do everything that I want them to do. So making it into that like holy grail top 5 is not easy, okay? So before we jump into those top 5, I want to give you a slight bit of information about what I look for, what I like about foundations, about my skin type, all of that good stuff, so that you can understand why I love these specifically. So I am 39, I'm going to be 40 at the end of January. I definitely have some fine lines, some early aging, some texture around this muzzle zone that foundations love to like try and sneak in suspiciously. I have a pretty balanced skin type. I have like no sensitivities to anything like SPF or anything, any ingredients that may be in foundations. I don't have especially oily skin and I don't have any dryness or dry patches. A pretty normal, although I hate that word, skin type as far as when it comes to describing for foundation purposes. My preferences when it comes to foundation are a medium coverage, a very natural skin-like finish and amount of coverage. I do have rosacea, so I have a fair bit of like redness. In the spring, summer, autumn, it's almost completely under control. In the winter, it gets angry, it's angriest, okay? It gets furious, not all of the time, but it especially hates going from cold outside into central heating. That's when my rosacea is like, right, that's it, I'm coming. And it comes from my neck. So I do want foundations that are able to kind of color correct and even out skin tone without relying on like a really heavy amount of coverage to do that. I want balancing, evening out, toning and smoothing foundations that aren't really troweled on, because I do like to still look like skin. Like, I don't like to look like skin. I like my skin to still look like skin. I like a bit of skin still showing through. I like to still see, you know, beauty marks and just have that gorgeous, glowy, fresh, healthy, I've just had a facial skin. I do love glow. I love luminosity, not necessarily like dewy shininess, but glowy, luminous radiance. Yes, 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 please. I also am not a big fan of powder, so I need my foundations to look beautiful and wear well, solid 8 hours without setting powder, because I don't really like setting powder. I can't be bothered with it. I have a normal skin type, so I fully believe and stand by it that a decent foundation should not need setting powder on my skin in the environment that I live in order to wear for like a decent 8 hours. So while all of these 5 foundations I'm going to mention have differences and little quirks or nuances about them that are different, what they all have in common is they work beautifully for my skin type. They are very flattering on fine lines, texture, more mature skin. They wear solidly well. They have mostly a medium coverage, although there is, I think, one exception. And they offer me varying levels of a natural, luminous, radiant, beautiful, fresh, healthy, skin-like finish. So that should tell you what I'm looking for when it comes to a foundation and all of the boxes that these are ticking. So I'm not going to rank these, but I will tell you that my holy grail is still undefeated. It's the Tom Ford Shade and Illuminate foundation. I'm so sorry. I try every year to find a cheaper holy grail, but it hasn't been done yet. But I will say, as I always do, I never pay full price for this. I'm always trying to get 20% off somehow, some way. And she's undefeated. It's been years. And I will say, if I'm going to spend a huge amount of money on a makeup item, foundation for me would be the one that I would spend that money on, because it's just the foundation for all makeup. If my foundation is looking stunning and it's wearing really well and it's absolutely making my skin look perfect, then everything else is going to look better as well. There's no point in, you know, using a foundation you don't like that much, that doesn't work that well for you, and then expecting everything else to look glorious on top of it. So I think foundation is truly the item that I am happiest to invest in. Also, you know, I've been through, I think, 2 full bottles of this, and this one now is probably on its final third, if I'm being honest with myself. Despite how many foundations I own and use and have in my regular rotation, I get through these bottles, but they do, you know, foundation lasts a very long time. It's not like, you know, lipstick, whereas if you wear it every day, it might be gone in 6 months, or a mascara, where if you use it every day, it's gone, you know, in a month or 2. This is going to last you a year, probably, if you're using it every time you do your makeup. So I feel like it's a solid investment, and that's how I justify it to myself. But I will never pay full price, okay? You won't catch me doing that. Now, this year is definitely the closest that the shade Illuminate has ever come to being toppled from top spot. But what I just notice about it, whenever I go back to it, having thought, oh yes, this foundation is challenging my shade in Illuminate, I might even like it more, I go back and use this one again, and every time I'm like, no, there's just something special about it. It always just pips the win for me, and it's in the finish. It has a medium coverage. I say it starts off at the lighter end of medium. It's a very thin, watery consistency, which I also really like. It feels nice on the skin. It's very easy to build, but it's also very easy to get a very sheer amount of product. Nothing tones down my redness and evens out my skin tone with as little coverage and as little sort of makeup-y appearance as this foundation. It surprises me every time. Every time I apply this, I'm like using a tiny amount, and it's quite a natural coverage, but yet my skin is perfectly evened. I don't know what magic is in here, but it's glorious. It's thin. I don't feel like I'm wearing foundation. It has the most beautiful, perfect finish, and I think that is what pips it with this foundation against like the others that I absolutely love and adore and couldn't tell you a fault with. This one, it's the finish. It's just the cherry on the top. It's so perfectly luminous, and it doesn't have to like wear to get that luminosity, and it doesn't get more and more glowy to the point where it's looking a bit shiny by the end of the day. It starts off the perfect balance, glowy luminosity, but in a sort of more smooth way, not a shiny, sweaty way. And it just stays there perfectly all day. It wears so nicely. It's absolutely beautiful. I've never had a bad word to say about it. And what has it been? 4 years? Longer? I don't know how long the love affair has been, but it has been multiple years that this has been my holy grail. And it continues its reign of terror. Or glory, I should say. I don't think it is terrifying, is it? Maybe the price point. So next up, let's talk about the outlier, the underdog, a foundation that slightly goes against everything I said at the beginning. Slightly. It's definitely the one that is not like all of the others in this top 5. It's the Hourglass foundation. This is the Soft Glow foundation. Do you see? Again, I've almost used this up, and I have 3 shades of this that I kind of mix and match depending on where we are in the year, and yet I've almost run out of this. This is my middle shade. So this is shade 8. I'm using this one at the moment as I'm kind of in between summer and winter, but most of the time I mix this with my lightest shade, which I can't remember what one it is, and my deepest, which I think is 10.5. I'm kind of always mixing a bit of this one in, hence why it's my most used bottle. But this one definitely has more coverage. So when I was saying earlier, one of these, not like the rest, this is a full coverage. It's also described as a soft matte or a natural matte, I believe, by Hourglass. And so it is utter shock horror that a foundation that is sporting the M word would make it into my top 5, because I'm not a matte girl. You guys know this. If you know anything about me, you'll know that. And matte foundations, absolutely never. I've never really found one I liked. I will say it's not really a matte to me. I'd say it's much more like a natural satin. It's as luminous as a matte could ever be, but so beautiful. It's so smooth. And this is my absolute number 1 holy grail when it comes to evenings, whether it's a date night, a wedding, a party, nights out, anything where there may be flash photography. This is my go-to because it's that little bit less glowy than all of my others that I love. It's one, probably the longest wearing without being set of any of these foundations, and two, because it's just that hair bit less glowy and luminous, it's, if there are lights and flashes and things like that shining off my face, it's not going to look, you know, too shiny, because even now when I'm filming and I have a light in front of me, the foundation I'm wearing today looks shinier than it does in person because there's a light shining on the glow. Whereas with this Hourglass foundation, it's going to look far smoother and less shiny under lights. So perfect evening, perfect for events, perfect for weddings, perfect for New Year's Eve parties where there might be photos with a flash, anything like that. This is like the one that I go to. It's as close towards being a matte foundation as I've ever got as far as loving a foundation. It's so flattering and smoothing and perfecting, and it has a beautiful finish that is just the right side of the sort of matte to glowy spectrum to be allowed in my top drawer. I absolutely love it, would repurchase it again and again. Very reliable, beautiful foundation, definitely more coverage than I typically go for, but if I'm in the mood for like a full beat, full glam, or I'm going out somewhere and I want to go all in, that is the one that I reach for. Next up, let's talk about probably my glowiest foundation, and it is the Haus Labs. I love this bottle. I might even like this bottle more than the Tom Ford. No, that's ridiculous. The words couldn't even leave my mouth. But I do very much like it, I'll say that. This is like a medium to full foundation, I would say. It kind of starts off the higher end of medium, but is very easily buildable to a full coverage. Super glowy, no SPF in it, and it just has such a gorgeous fresh glow to it. I definitely would say this is a little glowier than the Tom Ford, and it doesn't have SPF, so if that's a deciding, does it? So if that's a deciding factor, then 100% go for this one. It feels lovely on the skin. It's much thicker consistency than the Tom Ford, but still feels very light on the skin and wears really, really well. Whenever I use this one, I think I'm sort of in my top 5. It's maybe a little underrated by me. I forget to use it as much as I should. Whenever I use it, I'm always delighted because it's so glowy and fresh, but it doesn't look sweaty. It looks juicy. Do you know what I'm saying? I feel like it's very plumping and hydrating on my skin as well. And I absolutely love how healthy and hydrated my skin looks when I wear it. Absolutely beautiful. It's maybe not as smooth as the Hourglass because that is a more matte foundation, and it definitely has a little bit more coverage, maybe a little glowier than the Tom Ford. Totally different textures, but still gives me that same bit of like glow and kapow and healthy juicy skin whilst looking maybe slightly more makeup-y than the Tom Ford. It doesn't look makeup-y, just to be clear. It wouldn't be in my top 5 if it looked heavy or makeup-y. Just slightly less like natural is she wearing makeup than the Tom Ford. So if I want to look a bit more high glam as opposed to soft glam, and I still want all of that glow and hydration and luminosity, this is absolutely gloriously just juicy, you know. Next up, another incredibly well used and frequently grabbed for foundation. It's the No1 by Chanel, and this is the foundation I'm wearing today. As I said, it can look a little shiny on camera around here, but that's just because there's a big light shining on it. Also, check this out. This I think is empty. Okay, you see this? When I used this today, like it stopped pumping, like I was trying to pump out and nothing was coming out. Now I'm pretty confident that I could unscrew this and get a good few uses left out of it, but it is almost used fully up. And that's pretty impressive for someone who, you know, tries out and tests out foundations like as much as anyone can possibly do that. And I have drawers full of them. So all of these foundations that I'm really going through, it really speaks volumes, let me tell you. I was really going back and forth on my number 5 in this ranking between the No1 Chanel and the Nars, because these are the two that I would say come 5th between these two. It's so hard to choose. I went with the Chanel, but it was so close with the Nars. This is the one that has been kicked out of my top 5, but these two, it's literally neck and neck, okay? Very, very close. They are completely different, and the reason why I included the Chanel over the Nars is that the Chanel is just a bit more my type on paper. You know, Love Island lingo. The Nars is definitely a more full coverage. It's more akin to the Haus Labs. It's very glowy, but very full beat, quite full coverage. The Chanel is much more of a natural beast. It starts off definitely the lighter end of medium and builds up to a medium, but still looks so skin-like and pretty. And it is so smooth for what is quite a luminous, radiant foundation. It's very smooth and flattering, and it feels very hydrating. It is one of those sort of skincare foundations. If you care about that, I don't. But if you do, it's got some lovely skincare ingredients in there as well. So your skin it just feels comfortable and hydrating, and it looks so perfected and very smooth for such a glowy foundation, very easy to wear. Probably the one that I would say wears the least well of my foundations. If I set it with powder, it would absolutely make it like a solid 10 hours. But I feel like this is kind of coming towards the end of the wear by like the 8-hour mark. Very nice to use, feels very hydrating, very light, very nice and smooth and fresh and flattering on the skin. Absolutely beautiful. Probably the most natural out of this whole top 5. I would say it's like the most no makeup foundation of my top 5. So I told you that the Nars has been bumped, just marginally bumped out of this top 5. I still absolutely love it, but it is the one that has been booped out of my top 5. I still love it, but it's just that little bit more full coverage than I typically go for. I still absolutely love it. There are certain days where that is the one I want to wear, but if we're being picky, it's my top 5, so someone has to go because there is a newcomer, and it is the Prada foundation. This, as I hinted earlier, is the closest a foundation has come to toppling the Tom Ford Shade and Illuminate. If you are looking for a dupe for the Shade and Illuminate that is slightly less painful on the wallet, or that doesn't have SPF in it, this is the closest I've ever found to the Tom Ford. I used this when this first came out and I was like, wow, it's so beautiful. It's got that very natural glowing finish to it. It's got that very natural coverage that still evens out all of my tone and redness, and it's very smooth and it wears incredibly well, and it's just got the perfect sweet spot to the finish and to how skin-like it is. And I also really like the packaging. This also is refillable, which I absolutely love, because you guys know I have to buy multiple shades of everything, and so if I can just buy one foundation and then buy refill, that's easier for me to store. It saves me a few pounds, not as much as you would like, but it saves me a few pounds. So it had a lot going for it. Also no SPF, so if I wanted to just have one foundation in my collection, this does evenings as well, which the Tom Ford doesn't, because that has such a high SPF. Like, I would never wear that if I thought I was going to be under flash photography. It would be a ghost face disaster. So when this first came into my life, and I, you know, whenever I get a new foundation, especially one that I'm really, really loving, I wear it constantly for like weeks, because usually, you know, I want to give you guys really comprehensive thoughts in my monthly roundup, so I want to wear it as much as possible. And once I really know exactly how I feel about it, then I'll go back to wearing my other foundations, so I can, you know, decide where it sits against those and kind of go back and forth with them. And that's how I ultimately decide where it sits in like my ranking. Did it pip my Tom Ford Shade Illuminate? So when this first came along, and I absolutely loved it, and I was obsessed with it and loved everything about it. I was wearing it back to back, really thinking, oh my gosh, I think I like this more than the Tom Ford Shade Illuminate. So then I got to the point where I was ready to go back. I was going to try my Shade and Illuminate back to back with the Prada to see, has it overtaken it? And it's, again, you know, I put this on and I was like, no, it hasn't. There's just something about the Tom Ford that it's the finish and just the final effect it gives to the skin and how pretty and gorgeous the finish looks on the skin. I immediately was like, No, it's not. There's just something, and it is similar. It has a similar amount of coverage. It evens out skin tone similarly. It wears beautifully just as well. It's just as flattering on the skin. It has a very similar finish on paper, you know, that glowy skin-like gorgeousness, but there's like something about the Tom Ford, and I couldn't describe it accurately to you, but the finish is just a hair more beautiful. There's something so gloriously beautiful and unique about the finish of this that when I put it on, I was like, no, it's still the Tom Ford. It still pips it when it just comes to the overall finish and appearance once you've applied it. But the Prada is the closest I've ever come to thinking we had a rival. And if you just want the Tom Ford shade Illuminate, slightly less money without SPF, absolutely, this is the closest I've ever come. It's so beautiful on the skin. The shade is absolutely perfect. I'm still using my summer shade in this one, which is really unusual. I picked up the shade MN50. The bottle is not like, it's glass and it's frosted, so I can't see how much of this I've used, but it is still quite a new, you know, I've only had this, I don't know, a good few months, maybe 6 months or something. So I don't know, that's alarming me because I won't know I need a new one until I come to pump and nothing comes out. So that's horrifying, but it's so lovely. I've been using it a lot. Very pretty. It has the bonus that there's no SPF, so you could use it if you wanted, you know, that sort of glowier, very natural, skin-like, beautiful, very flattering foundation, but you want it for the evening, you want it to be able to be flash photographed, you want it to look good under lights, harsh lighting, then this one will probably serve you better than the Tom Ford. It will certainly be more affordable, not affordable, just to be clear. Beautiful packaging again, and it's got lots of bonuses as far as when it comes to being refillable, all of that good stuff. But it's a glorious, gorgeous foundation, and it's slam dunked its way into my top 5. I'm not really ranking, well, I'm not ranking these top 5. It would be impossible to do so, but the Tom Ford, I think, is still my holy grail, and probably will be for some while yet. I mean, I don't want it to be. I wish my holy grail was like a more reasonable price point and also a newer foundation. How is it that we're in 2023 and not a single foundation has come along better than this one? Please, guys, I want 2024 to be the year that that one gets knocked off top spot. We can do it. Come on, we love a good foundation. Give us more. We want more holy grails. But there you have it. Those are my top 5 foundations in 2023. Any surprises? What are your thoughts? Please let me know if this was exactly what you expected. Did you think there'd be more movement? Were you surprised that the Nars got kicked out? Were you surprised that the Prada entered? Please let me know all of your thoughts, and let me know your holy grail #1 foundation in the comment section down below. But I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, and I'd love to see you in the next one. Otherwise, take care for now. Bye 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 bye.